The 19 years that I spent living in the United States was more than enough time for me to see that it's probably not the ecosystem that I want to spend my life contributing to. Ever since I was little, I've been crippled by the questions of, why am I here? What is all of this for? And it's been so difficult for me to fit my desires for my life into what's possible in the society that I was raised in. Because the things that I want to be normal in my life don't really align with the things that are normal in the United States. The headlines seem to get worse every single day, and I feel so grateful yet almost more guilty to be reading what my home is going through from the peaceful countryside of France. I mean, come on. It just doesn't feel fair. It's not fair. And this privilege that I have right now to be experiencing the world and opening my perspective, it's absolutely not because of just things that I have accomplished or money that I have made or anything that I have done for myself. Just like everything else in nature, I'm so blessed to be a part of an ecosystem, to be loved and encouraged and supported and taught such valuable information. I mean, the word grateful doesn't even cut it. I've had the last month to pursue fulfillment through contributing to an ecosystem that is not my own home. And as I've been sharing little bits and pieces along the way, I've received a lot of questions from people who are in a similar situation to me. So I want to share some of the stuff that I've learned over the past month from these incredible ecosystems that I'm having the privilege to interact with. Okay, so let's get right into it. Let's talk numbers. A vast majority of the questions that I receive are pertaining to how I budgeted for an experience like this. The difficult part of figuring out budgeting for me was that all of the content that I saw about advice for this was come with me backpacking for 3 months in Europe or 4 months Southeast Asia, whatever. And so people had some sort of a general itinerary that they could plan for and try to budget out clearly. I have no desire to return to the United States at this point. And so it's kind of been a game of figuring out how much I'm willing to spend to experience something as fully as I can, while also being frugal enough to have the freedom to continue this until I feel like I find a place that I can, quote, settle down a little bit and make some money again. I've been doing a lot of research about how Americans can work in Europe because I really don't want this experience to end once the money runs out. I'm hoping to utilize what I have to learn some lessons that show me what I should be pursuing in a career and also my everyday work, even if it's not my forever job. I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned is that it feels incredible for the work that I do in a day to be something I find meaningful. It felt so good to get dirt under my fingernails and be a part of something that I kind of believed in. I say kind of, we'll get into it, but I'm also just really loving the fact that in each place that I visit, I can directly integrate the lessons that I learn into the next season. So if I'm feeling like cities are too much right now, I can head out to the countryside, or we'll get into it more, but after this Worldpackers experience, just having the freedom to come to clarity about what I need and head in that direction and not feel trapped in a situation that I don't feel like is conducive to my thriving. I love this freedom. It's such a good feeling. So if you're wondering how much money to save up to leave the country, I would say stop looking for a number, book a flight, save up as much as you can, and know that when the money runs out, it doesn't mean that you have to go home. Europe holds so many opportunities that America does not. One of the most exciting things that I've learned while I've been here is the way that their education system works. There are so many universities in Europe, especially in Germany, that offer completely free education, even to international students. I'm talking getting your bachelor's degree, and not 4 years, but 3, for literally no money. All that you're having to cover is your cost of living. And as I was looking for work visas and stuff here in Europe, it became kind of difficult once I realized that if I wanted a blue card, that means I need to be a skilled worker. And to be a skilled worker, I just need to live a little bit more life and get skilled at something, which I'm not ready to be pressured into yet. So if you have a degree, if you have a career, if you're good at something or a trade or whatever, you're so set. There's a really good chance that you'll be able to get a blue card and work in Europe, no problem. If you're an entrepreneur, there's this thing called DAFT. It's like Dutch-American Friendship Treaty. For a super low investment in a Dutch bank account, you can immigrate to the Netherlands and pursue your entrepreneurship while living there. be careful on that one, because I guess they're having a housing crisis for the natives, so just, yeah. My point being, there are so many different routes to immigrate or at least spend some time working here. For me, the one that seems most viable is a student visa. And like I said, I got so excited when I saw how affordable it is to get a degree here. I'm heading to Portugal next to check out some universities, as well as a few in Spain, both of which are like a couple €1,000 per year compared to like the $100,000 that you're gonna drop at least on a university in the United States. The other really cool thing once you get a student visa is that most of them also involve a like sort of work visa that allows you to work 20 hours a week in whatever country you're living in. And because cost of living is so much lower here, there's a really, really good chance that you could not only support yourself off of those hours, but also save up more for further adventures once you finish your degree. Discovering this open door gave me so much clarity as to what direction I should be heading while I'm here. At first, the mission was just Operation Get Out of the US and get somewhere else. And that somewhere else held so many lessons for me. I think if I could go back in time, I would probably still fly into Amsterdam. I enjoyed my experience in Amsterdam so much. The city was so vibrant and full of life, and the people that I met, especially the natives, were so welcoming, and I learned so much from the way that they create art and the way that they interact with each other and are building communities. I was just sitting on a bench, and all of a sudden this cute girl rolled up on a bike and handed me a flyer and was like, hey, like, come to this coffee rave thrift swap tomorrow. And when I went, we had the coolest conversation, not only her, but with this girl who makes music, and it opened my mind so much to the fact that there are other young people who want a community, a thriving one, and one that doesn't just exist digitally. I met people at my hostel who just blew my mind away with the way that they perceive the world and think, and they made me want to read different books and learn new languages. I mean, just getting to interact with people in this setting was such a gift. However, I will say I booked my flight to Amsterdam because it was the cheapest flight out of the United States, and in hindsight, I wish I would have done more research as to how much these places cost. Amsterdam was not terrible by any means. France has been kind of expensive. Paris really ran my pockets. Ironically, I came to France and New Mayapur specifically because, one, I never really cared about going to France. It was one of the last places on my bucket list. And two, I really have never liked Indian food very much, and this is like a Hindi temple. I just felt an undeniable force screaming, Olivia, you can't continue to just pursue comfort and things that you think will feel good to you. There have been so few parts of my life where I've been a minority in an environment and felt uncomfortable, not spoken the language, looked different than people, whatever. Like, I haven't experienced enough of that. And my experience at New Mayapur, it was beautiful and it was uncomfortable too, but I think that it was the discomfort that made the next steps so clear for me. And so if I could go back, I probably would have to do it again. I just would have maybe, like, how do you budget for this stuff? Seriously, like, and you know how it is, like, I'm so conscious about my money, whatever, like booking smart transport, hostels, but once I'm out with people and they're like, hey, like, do you want to do this? I'm like, okay, you know, and it is what it is. Money's just that. It's just, you know, whatever value we attribute to it. So now that I've been here, I'm really excited to head to some more affordable countries like Spain and Portugal. I feel like those places are some where my money will last a little longer, but also I want to talk about worldpacking because I think that is the key factor that is allowing me to learn so intensely and also save so much money so that this experience can be drawn out way longer than if I was just staying in hostels. Because the way that most people like interrail and backpack for a month and are constantly paying for accommodation, like I could not afford that for very long. There's no way. And I want to be here for more than a month. So with worldpacking, you can go like literally anywhere on the planet and do all sorts of different volunteer positions in exchange for accommodation and food. Typically, you will be working 5 days a week, 5 hours a day, but they all vary. While in these experiences, you have the opportunity to connect with actual locals, not just locals and like, oh, like I met someone who lived here while I was at a bar in Paris. Like, no, you talk to people in their space, about why they're doing, you know, like you really get to get into it, which I think is really cool. And if you're searching for the place that you may want to live one day, I feel like this is such a good way to get to know it without having to, like I said, spend a lot of money to be hopping around cities all the time, spending all this money on food, accommodation. And B, you really get to catch a vibe for what life in this place is like from the perspective of a person who's probably been doing it a lot longer than you. So my first experience was here in France, about 2 or 3 hour train ride outside of Paris. Immediately I fell in love with the peace of the countryside. I mean, all you can hear are birds. There's no road sounds or anything. And it was a really unique experience to be able to be so close on the inside of a spiritual community that I haven't had much interaction with. I read a couple books that piqued my interest in Krishna consciousness before I came, and you just have to take everything as a sign. So I did. I was like, let me go check it out. The rhythm of the day-to-day here was such a peaceful break from the bustle of doing travel and being in the city in Amsterdam. Essentially, we would wake up every day, for me, like around 7 or 8, and I would hop out on this little windowsill and journal and just watch the sun come up over a castle. Like, what? A castle? Breakfast was around 8:45, and we would all gather in the temple and say a prayer over the prasad. And then we would all eat. You could eat inside with everyone, but I loved to take my food out into the garden. It was just so peaceful out there. And literally, I have never tasted my food so fully as those moments that I got to have where there wasn't so much external stimulation. I think I go into like this autopilot mode when I'm eating in noisy places where it's like, just get the food down, get it over with, and move on. And so learning how to just like actually sit and enjoy my food, it was such a gift. A really important pillar to Krishna consciousness is not consuming meat. I've always been curious about being vegetarian, but I have never really had the motivation to figure out how to cook all of these new foods for myself, and so I haven't. And I don't know about you, but like touching raw meat out of a package, I can hardly do it. It's always freaked me out so much. And I had this experience a few months ago where I was at a restaurant and we ordered this like fish, and it turned out to be like the entire fish, like with the head and the tail and everything, and I literally could not eat it. Like I couldn't look at it unless it was like taken apart and put on my plate as a little fillet. And that just kind of made me wonder, like, if I can't stomach what I'm actually doing, like what these actions truly are, if I can only consume this when it's so far removed that I can disassociate it from the fact that it was ever a living creature, is this really something that I should be doing? So eating vegetarian for the past couple weeks has been such a cool experience. I didn't really believe that I would be able to have enough energy and stuff if I wasn't eating meat, especially after lifting for so long and realizing the importance of animal products in building muscle tissue. I just felt really reliant on that protein. But on the first day that I arrived to New Mayapur, they were celebrating the birthday of Ganga, who is one of their cows. She was turning 21 years old. And when I started to spend more time around these animals and around people who value the life of them so much, it really changed my perspective. I don't know if I'm going to move forward as a complete vegetarian, but as I'm figuring out how I want to interact with the ecosystem, it was a really cool lesson to learn, and it's definitely changing the way that I'm going to be intentional about the meat that I consume. Something I found interesting was a lot of Europeans would say, no, I'm not vegetarian, but if I lived in the United States, I would be. And once I started asking them more about that, it just, guys, the way that they treat animals, it's just messed up. Sorry, that was a whole tangent, but after breakfast, we would have a morning meeting which involved a little mini kirtan, which is basically chanting as a meditation, sometimes even dancing and singing. And then after that was when we would have our assignments for our jobs each day. You could be cleaning the castle, you could be out in the garden. There were a bunch of different things, and they had really expansive flower gardens all over the property, which they grew in order to make garlands to put on the deities in their temple. And for me, this is kind of when the romanticism came to a screeching halt, because this was advertised as a permaculture, eco-village, trying to be self-sustaining, whatever type thing. But the truth was, not a lot of food was grown. It wasn't ever something that the volunteers got to interact with. We were kind of just doing the dirty work for the devotees so that they could spend their days practicing their spirituality. which is absolutely a worthy cause. I just wish that I knew what I was signing up for and I hadn't been under false pretenses that I would be kind of like putting food on the table for myself and for my people. I was just putting flowers on someone else's deity. But I feel like this was a really cool practice in learning not to be super upset when things aren't what I thought, but trying to take what I can and leave the rest. And being present for that dissatisfaction of not contributing to something that I personally believe in was a really important experience for me to figure out my next world packing experience, which I'll talk about later. Back to the day-to-day. After the kirtan and the morning meeting, we would usually have about 30 or 45 minutes or so to just kind of chill out to ourselves. And then we would head over to our respective posts for the day. Honestly, I worked in the garden, I think every single day, except for one that I cleaned. And I'm really glad that I got to do that. It was really basic labor, but it was getting my hands dirty, and that made me feel so alive. There were two head gardeners who would each take a couple volunteers each day, but I spent most of my days with a man named Jalaruta. This is a guy who's lived 47,000 lives. He has the coolest stories. If you ever go Worldpack here, I implore that you end up in the garden with Jalaruta at least once and ask him about his life, because oh my gosh, we had the coolest conversations. And one of the most frustrating parts about the community here was I felt like so many of my interactions were kind of really pushy, in the sense of listen to what I believe and embrace it for yourself as well, which was really overwhelming when I thought that I was just going there to grow vegetables and stuff. Jalaruta created an environment where I could ask the questions that I was curious about, and even if the answers weren't something that I liked, it didn't feel like they were being shoved down my throat. They were just being presented to me as what he believed and what he felt was right. He was real. He was a real human, and I think that his perspective was one of the most valuable ones to me throughout the entire experience. We would work a couple hours in the morning, which were usually my favorite because it wasn't too hot at that point. And then we would go back to the temple around 1 o'clock for lunch. And then it depends on what task you're doing, but you'll typically work 3 to 5 or something like that in the afternoon. Luckily, Jalaruta was conscious of the fact that we were working outside in June, and so that meant that we would get a lot of work done in the morning and then sometimes wait until 5 o'clock to start working again so that it had cooled off a little bit. Dinner was at 7 o'clock, and by then it was usually cool enough to go eat out in the garden again, which was amazing. On Mondays and Fridays, there were yoga classes that you could join, and there were also a few other volunteers and devotees who were interested in yoga and who sometimes would hold yoga classes in the yoga hall, even if they weren't officially being held, which was a fun way to get a little bit involved in another culture that I've always been interested in. There were also 2-hour kirtans on Thursday nights, and then every single morning the devotees would go to meditation and worship at 4 in the morning, which was so early. Of course, I had to go once just to say that I did it, and it was a really, really unique experience. I'm glad that I checked it out. It involved japa meditation and pouring water on a little tulsi tree, all sorts of cool stuff. But none of the spiritual stuff was required necessarily, although there was a lot of pressure from some of the devotees to really assimilate to their beliefs, which was one of the things that made me the most uncomfortable and kind of ready to get out. There was this one woman who, I swear, she didn't even work there. She would just pull up to the temple to tell the girls what she thought about their modesty and whether or not their clothes were appropriate based on... So they, their monks are celibate, which is awesome. But she just kept harping on how we were, walking around half naked and making it so hard for them. And I was like, bro, please. Even though the interactions with some of the devotees were intense at times, I loved the way that I could walk 5 minutes in any direction and be totally unfindable in a forest. It was really fun to explore a new ecosystem, even though it was filled with a lot of thorns and brambles. There were also really cool things like banana slugs, or not banana slugs, I guess, slugs in a color that I had never seen before, new species of fungi. A little bit into the forest, I discovered an abandoned French village, and that was super cool. There was also a small town that was about 40 minutes to an hour of a walk from the farm, but just a 10-minute drive. And we went into it a few times to explore, celebrate one of the volunteers' birthdays. there was one night with a bunch of music. There was like a whole brass band and then an accordion and then a French DJ. I mean, it was just so fun. I think the thing that became most clear to me during this time was how intentional I need to be about where I'm investing my energy, and if the project is something that I'm passionate in or if it's just vaguely connected to something that I'm interested in. And to be fair, I feel like I really did need like a first experience to figure out how it felt to be working in a garden, working outside, like actually doing this stuff. And now that I've gotten a taste, like I'm addicted. Right now, I'm heading to Portugal to go work on a project that is not only a garden and farm, but also a regeneration project for the forest, because that area has been really ravaged by agriculture for a long time. And so they're trying to bring back the natural biodiversity. I apologize for how totally cracked out I sound. I had my second cappuccino of my entire life this morning, and my heart's going at 1,000,000 miles a minute, y'all. But the philosophy that I was really attracted to about this volunteer experience is that as farmers, we've kind of been taking from the land and stealing its nutrients without reinvesting in it. And then once it has nothing else to offer us, it just gets left behind. And with the way that current administration in the US would like to utilize our natural resources and sell off our natural spaces, I'm so interested in learning not only about what this does to the land in a hands-on way, but also ways that we could recover so that this feels a little less hopeless, you know? Portugal is also a really affordable place to go to school, and it's next to the beach, and I miss the ocean so much. So while I'm there, I'm going to use my weekends to visit different universities and just try to catch a vibe for what it looks like to be a student there, and also what degree programs they offer, because I feel like I've always just been looking at a degree which one can I get done, which one will be broad enough for me to do whatever. But I feel like, I don't know, I get so excited about learning about plants and the way that the earth works, and so I don't know exactly what I should be studying. That's why I'm excited to catch a vibe for this whole regeneration stuff. But oh my gosh, there are so many open doors, and I'm so excited about this next season. I'm going to be stopping in Barcelona too, and hopefully checking out a university, but if not, just enjoying Spain, because come on now, it's summer, let's go. Another question that I've been receiving is how it feels to be living in another country. And to that I'd say, I've only experienced very vaguely 2 of them so far. Netherlands, loved. France, not quite as much. I think a huge factor of that, though, is the fact that I don't speak very much French. It's not to say that there's not people who speak English, but I just don't want to walk around expecting everyone to speak my language. So it feels like a good move to head to Spain, practice my Spanish since I've been learning that for a while, and then down to Portugal, where I feel like I at least have a little bit more of a basis to work off of than French, where how do you there's just so many sounds that I can't make. So language is definitely something to consider when figuring out where you want to go. But for the most part, living in another country has been the best feeling ever. Guys, the US is literally built so weird. Oh my gosh. I could go on and on about all of the things that are wrong with it, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to say that if you're uncomfortable, I promise you there is somewhere in the world that feels a little bit better. And that's the beauty of our youth right now. We have to take this time to experience as much as we can, contribute to everything we can, and figure out where our skills can be used best, and also what it feels like to be comfortable in the place that you live. So I guess to sum it all up, number 1, do not let money prevent you from pursuing an experience that you know is conducive to you thriving and figuring out where you belong in this world. 2, consider doing Worldpackers or some other volunteer experience to be able to extend your stay, really catch a local vibe, and maybe even get some direction as to what career or path you should be pursuing. 3, if you want to get your education but you can't afford it, it's probably just because the United States is a freaking trap and they're trying to just put us in all this debt before adulthood so we can never escape. Do not fall for the trap. Get out, get your education, learn about something that you love, and you don't have to drop $100,000 on it. Woo! 4, I think this is number 4. If you are thinking about doing world packing, be really intentional about the one that you choose. Look at tons, apply to a few, but really, really call your host, FaceTime them, really ask them, like, what is your mission? What are you passionate about? What is your project? Why does it exist? Because our time is valuable and our energy is valuable too. And so I would hate for you to experience the same feeling that I did, of feeling like I wasn't contributing to something that was part of my mission, I guess. Number 5, if there are any questions that I can answer that will help you figure out where your ecosystem may exist, please reach out, please comment, whatever it is. Like, I would love to talk. I'm so excited to be a part of a generation that has so much freedom of choice, and for us to be able to get to use it. Today, I'm exploring some more little French towns, as well as heading back to Paris, because I just feel like I didn't quite see enough last time. After that, like I said, we got a second in Barcelona, and then probably exploring Lisbon before I head 2 hours south to my next experience. Let me know in the comments what questions I should be answering over those clips. If you made it to the end, thank you. I'm so glad to be a part of an ecosystem with you.